Hey Laura, it's good to see you.
See you too.
I want you to admire something new that I might be wearing.
Look at you, fashion forward.
I know it, and I don't even have a smartwatch. I wanted to show you what I found yesterday at the Dollar Tree, of course.
Of
I
course.
think, can we get stock in that? Because I'm spending more money there than.
Right? I think we should have preferred memberships. Why don't they have rewards
Yeah, yeah. It's like, give me 10% off. I can spend 90 cents instead of a dollar.
instead of the Target
But,
card?
yeah. But look at this. This is, and here's the packaging that it's in.
Okay.
Like I say, my green, it's a yellow watch, but it looks green.
Okay.
But it
But
says
it's a smartwatch. Yeah.
it says smartwatch band bracelet. Okay. But what I saw on a presentation that I attended recently was they suggested, buying one of these again for $1 and putting an icon that maybe we're using it for the word of the week. Maybe we're just wanting to remind our staff to kind of be, emphasizing this word for whatever reason. I happen to put look see in there because I thought that eyeball was easy to see. But it's just a little plastic rubber, but then you can just take it out and look. I could even exchange it
Oh.
to a different one. So now maybe we're going to emphasize the word go.
Yeah.
And there it is. So all kinds of wearable, opportunities. And you could maybe make it a 4 grid and have 4 different icons. So maybe out on the playground, depending again on our student, we could have 4 different words. Think about it.
Yeah. Well, and I even like it, we talk about the bracelets sometimes for getting attention for
Yes.
I have something to say. I'm thinking, again, if you are in a novel environment or you're wanting like a quick cue to tell somebody like I have something to say or wait for me to speak, you can show that to somebody in the community or your communication partner. I think that's so great. And you pick your color.
I was gonna say, yellow, blue, black.
You could bedazzle that. Is it silicone?
Ooh.
Like you could even bedazzle that, or like get yourself some duct tape and have the kiddos decorate it.
Or like puff paint or something.
Oh, puff paint. It's been a while since I broke out the puff paint.
I know, I haven't done that either. But I like, and it's plastic, so it's waterproof. This presentation also talked about, and I bought some years ago. They were like wristbands, paper ones, like a little tablet thing. When Aaron was in grade school, I guess I thought I was going to help him remember, but I then used them to put them on like backpacks or straps or something. But same thing, you could write a message, and so they showed those too. One they had was kind of like more of a watch look. But so quick and easy, just reminder type of thing. But the fact that this one's plastic will cause it to be more durable.
Well, and so many of the fashion forward watches now are silicone based. So like I'm thinking too, we're talking this week, we're in episode 12, we're talking about high school students and older students and resources for them, because so often, we get stuck into these patterns of building language for emerging communicators, which is incredibly important. But we need to build these. Yeah, right. Oh, please. Oh, yeah. As I know, my 3-year-old's going on like 16. I don't even know. It's just crazy. So knowing what supports we can put in place that are still motivating, that are still age appropriate and, trendy because they want to fit in.
Right. I was going to say, if anything, sometimes we've got to get their buy-in. And so this could definitely be,
especially if you like add some of those adaptations and they can, I'm not as hip as the current teenager, but no, but I mean, I'm sure there's something on TikTok where they've created something to attach their fashion and, or Etsy, or there's got to be a Pinterest board somewhere, right? There's got to be.
That's a good place to start looking. Yeah.
Well, my fun find this week, we were talking about, it's not nearly as cool as yours. Like I need to get back out to the dollar store, the dollar spot.
I just go every once in a while. I just go up and down the aisles.
You got frequent flyer miles. So like, oh, there's Cyril again. Yeah. But no, mine actually was just this wonderful quote I found. I love quotes. Sometimes they just speak to me. And Walt Disney has a fair few. He was a very wise man. And
he was, and that's to say, energy he used for all kinds of things.
Yeah. And so there was this great quote I came across that said sometimes that the difference between winning and losing is just not quitting. And I was like, oh, it's so great. It's so great, because isn't it the truth that, we think about adversity and we think about all the things that our kids go through, and we think about the staff getting frustrated, and we know that we call it a marathon, but it's really like, marathon has hills, right? If we're using these analogies, or maybe a roller coaster, right? You got your peaks, but you also have your valleys, and we have to acknowledge that there's going to be tough times, and so many of if you listen to some of the other podcasts, or if you listen to someone who is a proficient, independent AAC user at a conference, or just a webinar, if you listen to them, quite often they say that they had the supports that they needed. They didn't always have one system. They might have switched systems throughout time because of whatever reasons, technology or needs-based change. But the thing that was consistent as far as their message was that the support system that they had never gave up. Right. And so we have these students, and sometimes, staff will say, they're too old, but we understand basically what they want or what they need. So we're not going to introduce something. And just knowing that it's never too late. It's never too late to introduce a system, and it's never too late to continue to learn, right? Even in my interview with Kim Rankin, we talked about the fact that she's not stopping her modeling. It's just shifted and changed because his needs have shifted and changed. So the same rules apply for older students who still benefit from AAC.
And I think, sometimes our realization of how much our students mature. I think we see them in a lot of our staff every day for years and years and years. But if you can step back and look, they have different interests. They have different things that they are motivated by that I think we need to do a better job of keeping up so we can tap into that. And then, we will see changes, and we need to make changes.
Yeah. And then, knowing the longevity of an AAC system too, not throwing in the towel, like, oh, this isn't working, we just need to throw in the towel. Like, well, we've only tried it for 8 weeks. So we know it takes over a year for someone to learn natural language with many, many opportunities. So let's not throw in the towel. Let's keep going. Let's keep trying and see, what we get after longer periods of time and more support. Yeah, it spoke to me in many, many different ways. Don't quit. Hang in there, you guys.
And that's for all of us. That's not specific to the students we support. That's for all of us, because you do have to push through sometimes, and the payoff will be there if you just persevere.
Right. And so speaking of payoffs, we're going to talk to some wonderful staff at Mehlville High School today. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Stephanie Ochoa and Claire McCarthy, the teacher and respective SLP at Mehlville High School. And they have a phenomenal program there where they support students of all different ranges of skills and abilities, and they support them up through their transition to VSP or graduation. And so they have tons of great little gems and strategies and points of discussion that I think would be very helpful for a lot of our staff that are in families that are supporting some of our older students.
And that's something that I think you may be supporting a student at a very young age, but she is going to leave you and go to a team like this. So we definitely need to be looking ahead for what can be going. And even if you're not thinking of those things, like your team that you're going to talk to are thinking about, we should be mindful. So I'm glad you're bringing that to us as far as everybody will benefit.
Well, and just the concept of, with a lot of students, when you think about high school, you're like, okay, get them to graduation. But that's not how communication and AAC works, right? It's a lifetime skill that they have to have. And so we're in crunch time. We have to instill all of these powerful components to expectations and competencies, right? Janice Light's 4 competencies: operational, strategic, social, and language. All of those have to be instilled so that a student can walk away and be a proficient communicator when they leave. Otherwise, we've set them up to be dependent, and we don't want to do that if we can help it. So
yeah, I always say high school is when reality sets in, because then you see a deadline, whereas before it feels like it's forever before this kid's going to leave us. This is the date. And so I think people start really thinking more about community and the future, but you can't make those things happen overnight. You can't, our students don't, benefit from a crash course. They need the time to practice and have opportunities for years and years and years, and they will be much more successful.
Exactly. So we hope you enjoy, sit back, relax, and here's our interview with Stephanie and Claire. Hi, everyone, and I just want to welcome to the AAC Innovation Podcast, the team from Mehlville High School. We have some wonderful ladies here today who are joining us, Stephanie Ochoa and Claire McCarthy. Welcome, ladies.
Hello, thanks.
Hi, thanks.
Could you just do the listeners the honor of introducing yourselves and just tell us a little bit about your background? Tell us how you ended up here.
I'll go first, Stephanie. So My name's Claire McCarthy, and this is my 4th year as an SLP and as an SLP at Mehlville. So I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska, but I moved to St. Louis when I went to college at St. Louis University, and then ended up staying for Fontbonne University's program, where I got specialized in AAC and cochlear implants, which was really fascinating. So after that, I had one of my student teaching experiences in the district, and so I've been at Mehlville since.
Let's see. I actually started off as a paraprofessional with SSD many moons ago. Realized that this was just the path that I wanted to continue to go down. Decided to go to Fontbonne, finished my degree, and this is my 4th year as a teacher here at Mehlville. Very, very short period of time for a semester. I left SSD and actually taught for St. Louis Public. So I'm coming with a background of knowing how many resources SSD has, felt very stranded on an island all by myself, and then came back and feel very supported. So it's great to be in Mehlville with the support that we have here.
So a fun fact is that Stephanie and I both started at this school together. So as an SLP, I work directly with the center-based program, which Stephanie came with. So we kind of started on this journey together. So it's fun to be interviewed together.
It never fails. Like, I've known you guys for 4 years, and I already have learned something new about you. I didn't know you both went to Fontbonne, and I didn't know that you had also a background in cochlear implants. Mm-hmm. And I knew you left and went to St. Louis Public, but I always tell people, it's like, you don't realize how gifted we are at SSD and the resources at our fingertips until you go elsewhere, and how hard it is just to get everything. True. So I love it. Okay. So you guys both are at the high school program at Mehlville, and you work with a center-based program. Tell us a little bit about what that looks like. Tell us about your students. Tell us about the program itself.
So we actually have 2 teachers in our program this year. Our other teacher, Grace Higgins, is actually out with a new baby. So congrats to her. We're eager for her to come back though. And then Claire McCarthy is our speech path, and she's housed with us. So we have 2 classrooms. One of our classrooms is half kitchen, half classroom. So we have the washer, the dryer, refrigerator, everything that we possibly need for our life skills, independent living. And that's molded into our program and our setting through and through. We have kind of a small group this year. We're like 2 females and 6 male students in our programming. But the good news is our students actually get to attend 4 days a week live in person. Mondays are virtual for us right now. And then the rest of the days our students get to attend. And we just have the multiple disabilities just across the gamut in our programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we quickly realized when I first started working here that my desk was up on the 2nd floor in a little office. And I was downstairs so much in our 2 rooms that I just found a desk, and I don't think I've been to my office since. I just like being in the action. I like being with the students and, staying busy.
Well, and it's really great because you're not just getting the students all the time and being able to push in, but you also have the staff there too that you can talk to and collaborate with.
Exactly. We hear time and time again when people come to, visit our program, how collaboration is such a buzzword that everyone uses, but we really do it 24/7. And I think that's why we have such a great environment, is because we are so close. Since we spend so much time together, we know how to work with each other. We know our strengths, who to go to for certain questions. We always are just problem solving 24/7. So that's why I like being down there. I'm just involved. I can help. In our program, there's always things coming up. There's always something that's new or that we need to think about. So I can be right there to help, and I'm just as involved.
Well, and Stephanie, you talked about how you really have like the gamut as far as students go. You have a lot of different needs and ability levels. And so speak to the listeners a little bit about that. I'm sure they can relate. We always have different challenges, even if the numbers aren't as high one year. You might have one student who really needs a lot of support or who's brand new to the team, and you're trying to kind of help them shift. And now we have COVID too. So all of the flexibility and the changes that we're adapting to. Can you speak a little bit about this?
So a couple of our students, we have 3 students who throughout the day, at some point or another, are a one-on-one with a paraprofessional. So having our team so close together and all in the same spot, it becomes very vital for us to know that this particular student possibly had a behavior earlier. And if you're not down there and you have that disconnect, how challenging it is to kind of pull you as somebody aside and be like, hey, hint, hint, so-and-so is still de-escalating, or whatever the situation is. So we're close enough that we know that these students are having the behaviors when they're occurring, what triggered it, and we can work collaboratively as a team. One of our other students has not been able to attend virtual school due to COVID. We haven't seen them in person yet. We're still working with the family in order to encourage them to come up to school. But this is a student who's also a refugee. They're minimally verbal. So all these different barriers that we have that we slowly have to peel away, like if you're peeling away the layers of the onion, and we get to the core of this particular student and reach them. And it just goes back to just that collaboration and how are we going to reach the core of this student and make him successful in this environment. We just need to get him here first, and we're working on it.
Yeah. And I think it speaks to, maybe you could even give an example of if a student, would you just verbally tell another staff, but kind of indiscreetly exchange that information of if a student's having a rough day, or what does that look like? Because again, I think other teams do have similar setups in the physical environment, but you guys have such a natural way of doing, like you said, the handoff or a relay to someone that's picking someone up.
So sometimes during that handoff switch, our staff are very well known that our room numbers are 122 and 124. We're a wall away from each other. Our staff might know that this class typically is going to happen in 122, and we can simply just have the door closed, and we have like we're the Mehlville Panthers, so we're green. Mm-hmm. We'll have like a green awning that we might just close on our door. And that is a nonverbal cue of we're all going to go into 124 because 122 is just not an option right now. We also carry walkie-talkies on us. And sometimes it might be because we know we're in that middle of a transition. We might just on the walkie-talkie just say, hey, I'm going to meet you guys in room 124. And again, that's just a small little verbal cue. It's not identifying the student. It's not really identifying the case, but it's just giving the staff that little cue of we're just moving our location for the time being. Claire, can you think of any other examples of that?
I think you said that great. I think also since we spend so much time together, it's just like anyone where we almost can look at each other and we'll just pick up on that, or, we'll say kind of like little clues to each other saying, no, I'm just going to stay in this room. We're going to work on some things. And our staff is great, not only our teachers, but also our paras, where they know exactly what I'm saying and they know how to just take it from there. They're, without any questions, say, all right, kids, let's go over to 124. We're going to work on some math, or, with no questions. And I know that they're in good hands. And then once we have time later, maybe to debrief, I can, but kind of a no questions policy, just keep it rolling. So we're lucky in that sense.
And it's interesting from the outside looking in, just knowing how many students you guys have had that have very specific and long-standing functional behavior, like programs in place because they have escalating behaviors, and watching the shift after they come to the high school, and watching just like, it might take some time, it might take a couple weeks, a couple months even, but watching them just kind of calm because they have expectations, they know what those expectations are, and you guys do such a nice job of not really reinforcing things that would lead to escalation and supporting things that lead to calm, positive learning environments. So I'm partially just giving you guys some props here, and partially just curious, if there's any other things that you guys can think of that would be helpful for other teams that might be accepting a really difficult student that, because you hear that, right? You hear like, oh my gosh, the student has so many behaviors. Just you wait when they come up next year. You guys get that a lot, but you do a really good job of presuming that they are going to excel no matter what.
Yeah, and I think as a team, we right off the bat, we start to figure out what's causing that behavior, and then what are we going to do to help support the student and redirect that behavior in a more positive direction. Mm-hmm. And with that comes using those natural visual cues that are all over the place. We really hone in because we want to work on job skills. We want to make our students successful. So we start in the classroom. It's as simple as just starting off with recognizing some of those community awareness signs. What do they mean? And then what does that look like in control of our body? Understanding, just looking across the street. And there's times that we go outside, being on Lee May Ferry, we've practiced it. We've walked across the street. We've practiced looking at the red light or the green light, the walk sign, the do not walk sign. But practicing it in the classroom first until our students can show us, I'm in control of my mind and my body. I'm centered enough to know that I can take my students out into the actual community right outside of our back door and start practicing those. Our students are in charge of recycling here at the high school. We collect the recycle bins and dump the paper for the entire school. So taking that outside, we have to look in the parking lot. How do we walk safely in a parking lot? And we don't ever want to assume that our students can't do something, and we're willing to set them up. And if it's a failure, we're willing to fight that fight, and we're willing to figure out how can we make it better the next time. We have visual cues all over our classroom.
Yep. I'd say definitely at the high school level, the number one, doesn't matter the category, the subject, is independence. That's what we want, right? We're setting them up to be successful with whatever that might be for that student. So independence is our goal. So we right away try to decrease that prompting. We love wait time. We will give that wait time. I love making them problem solve on their own, right? We're going to give them that time to do that. And like Stephanie said, if that means that maybe the first time we have a meltdown or we have a failure, then that's our learning opportunity, which is how we see it. So we like to decrease prompting and increase independence, and having them try to problem solve on their own, but then also seeing what visual supports can we put in place. Because maybe they can't do that skill or that task completely independently, but with those visual supports, they can. So trying to find those, and going back to us being like a very always collaborating, is that our paras, I think, have also really gotten comfortable with knowing what type of visual supports I can make, or what schedules, or what would help a certain student. So I love it. I have Post-it notes all over my desk with my to-dos. I'm a very visual person as well. So they know, just write a Post-it note. Hey, this student is really struggling with the transition from this class to this class. Could you make a visual for me? And then there we go. So, then that way they're not having to look at a para every time that they want to complete a step and ask if it's okay. They have their checklist. They can work on doing that on their own. And then maybe we can even take that visual away if they don't need it anymore, or else it's there for them. And going off of that too, with setting them up for after high school, we try to be as vocal as we can be, to tell them why these visuals are helpful, or some of our students may need written directions versus verbal. So we try to openly talk about that, so that when they go off to those job sites, they can self-advocate for themselves and say, this is what I need. Or then we have those in place to help with job coaches and say, this is how we were successful. We want to set them up for success to be as independent as possible, I think is what we do. And we do that because we work so well together. Just like we make our students problem solve, we have to problem solve every day as well.
Well, and I just love the idea of just something as simple as a Post-it, right? We're always like on email and like thinking like, you know, the walkie-talkies are great, but like just the Post-its, like having little Post-its and thinking of ideas on the fly. And then, you know, you honoring that by following through and saying, yeah, of course I'll make a visual. Like there's no like full big discussion. Like it's just a working fluid environment. And again, the students feed off of that, and so that's a great small tip. Like, you know, guys, pull out some Post-its, use different colors for different people, whatever. Right. You know, just jot things down on the fly. Love it. And I love the idea of just making things so practical, using what you already have in the environment. Even during COVID, like you guys historically have done a lot of going out into the community, practicing, right. You know, I know we've talked about setting kids up to order, like out using their communication devices to order at certain specific places like Panera and, you know, even though it's not as healthy, McDonald's, like, you know, some of those places, depending upon what they're going to see, because it's not functional for us just to practice it in the classroom. Like they really need the hands-on decontextualization of what does this look like in real life.
Right. We'll always talk about for those trips, like the setting they're going to, what are the appropriate social skills in those settings? What type of vocabulary words might they need in that setting? And then when we do order, I have them, we love mixing our lessons. So while Stephanie is having them read the menu and picking out, you have this much money that your mom and dad are sending, what items are you going to pick? And I work with them. Then they come over to my desk and I have them practice ordering it. So we'll write it out completely on a note card, and then they can take that note card and put it in their pocket on the day of. So it's always there for them if they need to use it. And if they don't need to, but it's there. So like you said, just setting them up for success is a big. And then if we have a problem that comes up, we always have, when we get back from that day, kind of talking through what could we have done differently?
Yeah. And with some of our programs, I remember there was one day last school year at some point, I don't know, I was at home for some reason. And I don't know if it was when I had my baby or what it was, I don't know. But I was at home and I received a phone call from a student and they were asking permission if they could get into my desk drawer in order to find something. And it was all in preparation of an outing that you guys were getting to go on. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was so functional too, was normally they would have to ask me, but I wasn't there. So they had to call me and practice those phone skills. And I feel like there were times too last year that we weren't able to go out to the community for whatever trip it was. So we ended up having the students practice on the phone, ordering food on the phone and having it brought here to school. And it just makes me wonder, in the time of COVID, of course, administrators would all be different, but I'm just wondering, is that even an option for us? Because then our students can still work on those budgeting skills, reading the menu, and then those phone skills, because those are so important to have too.
100%. Yeah. How do you guys, when you guys are thinking about your programming, how do you decide what is set? And then how do you make decisions about, we think this would be really important, so we want to shift things and we want to try something new? What does that look like?
I feel like it just kind of looks like if it becomes like a reoccurring like trouble spot, then we're like, hey, let's really hone in on this. And I feel like one of the examples that I keep thinking of as like we've been talking is one of our jobs is always historically, even before Claire and I came, was that our students would clean the cafeteria tables. And our paraprofessionals who have been here longer than us were very like, no, it has to be this order. It has to be this order. And we just were not understanding like, why does it have to be that order? So through conversations and things, we kind of figured out like their perspective, but then they slowly started understanding our perspective. We started looking at, I've never worked in the food industry, so relying on other people that have worked in the food industry, you might be zoned. So it may not be that you're working collectively at a restaurant. You might say, this is your area. These are your 5 tables. So we started structuring cleaning the cafeteria like that, just kind of going with the times, understanding what an industry really has as their examples. And then a favorite situation of mine was during this whole chaos of nobody really understanding how we're supposed to clean the tables. We had, at the time, she was a freshman, and she dropped the bucket of water all over the cafeteria, and it was just everywhere. But she couldn't figure out how to clean it up. So like Claire mentioned earlier, was how we just, not that we want our students to fail, but we need to figure out real life, how are we going to solve it? So we stepped back and we let her figure it out. And the first thing she found were those typical school napkins that we know won't even soak up like a drop of water, let alone a bucket of water. And she's trying her absolute best on her hands and knees, and it's just not working. So she moves to like something else, and I would like paper towels, and then maybe to a cloth rag, and it's nothing is soaking it up. And eventually on her own, the student finds a mop, and it worked. And we taught her how to use like the squeegee part of like the mop bucket that the custodians have. So it was just a real life learning example. It all started off as an argument between staff essentially over how do we clean the tables properly. We rezoned it. And in that transition, we had a spill, but it created a perfect opportunity for a student to learn something. And recently maybe she's clumsy, but recently she just dropped a cup of water in the classroom like last week and knew exactly how to go clean it up, knew exactly where to go, knew exactly what to do. And that's all we're really looking for, is just that success. And she didn't need prompts. She just stood up, went, found a mop, came back, cleaned it up. Not a big deal. We moved on.
That's awesome. That's so great. And you could see the carryover from one to the other, and knowing that you guys she wasn't going to be prompt dependent because she'd already figured it out on her own. That's huge. So, and then that makes me think too, having those same expectations, you guys carry that over to the users that we have that come and then exit out of the program that also have communication systems. And so one of the brilliant things is that sometimes teams will think, okay, the system is the tool and the system is what we have to make work, but you guys really support the language, and whatever system it is, it's not about the system, it's about what you're doing with the system. So are we helping them support the skill of ordering? Are we helping them support the skill of repairing conversations? We had a few the last couple of years where they were highly unintelligible, but we knew that they could have gainful employment, and we're getting a lot more of those in the district where they've just kind of fallen through the cracks because we can understand them, but then we know that they can get a job, but then they aren't employable because of, number one, communication. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about how your students who have AAC systems, how they're doing, how you integrate that in the curriculum, and any other things you can think of as far as tips to help them move towards that transition to work?
Right. Well, I think that's so important because a lot of times we have students who we're with them 24/7. So it almost becomes like family where, yes, we can understand them, or, we know the tips and tricks. But when they go out into the community, and we see that a lot of times when we used to do like coffee cart around our building, not only them not knowing how to repair it, but even detecting that there was any communication breakdown at all. So we like to start there with just talking about what are those non-verbal cues when someone did not understand you at all, because a lot of times customers are very polite and they might act like they understand even though they don't. And so having those, what can come from that. So we try to work on detecting that there has been a communication breakdown. And then I give them strategies. I'm all about AAC doesn't just mean because you have that dedicated device that's the only way that you communicate. Is that a great way to communicate? Yes, but if you can communicate in another way too and it be successful, then great. I like to use them as strategies. So if they know that their strategy is they can say it slowly one more time and then picking up that the listener did hear, awesome. If they tried that strategy, I want them to be able to detect, they still can't understand me. I know my other strategy is my AAC device. So that's what I like to do.
It's funny you say that, because we had a student that comes to my memory recently being in like the last 5 years, because that's where I'm at these days, but relatively recently. And back, I say this because they worked at Shop and Save as their BSP program, which, you know, no longer exists. So they were working at Shop and Save, and I went out to do a site visit because, you know, they were kind of like, well, they're not really going to the device. Is there any strategies you could use? So when I went out, I realized that the time frame that this individual was doing his job, which was bagging at the time, he had all like customers that were over the age of like 80 or 90. And so these customers, even though he would try to use the device, you know, the customers couldn't hear him because they didn't have their hearing aids in, or they just didn't have hearing aids. And so one of the strategies we talked about, I know, I'm like, man, I have him working on it. He's doing a good job. He's going over. And so he just would skip it and just always use bags. And I'm like, but that's not what everybody wants. You really need to clarify for customer satisfaction what they need and want. So we worked on bringing his system over to the customer using a nonverbal, like a tap or just a, you know, a wave, to show the message on the device, enlarge the text, show the message on the device so they could see what he was saying because they couldn't hear him.
Right.
And then again, like you mentioned, Claire, just recognizing someone didn't hear you for whatever reason. What does that look like?
And then what to do.
Right.
And I think also, which was interesting, last year I had the first experience with you. We talk about setting up our students for success, our students who do use those devices. So I had the great experience of working with Laura last year, which she helped me through the whole process of the insurance process of getting, you know, a device funded or looking at grants so that we can help those families who, you know, have had the great resources of SSD and, you know, might be 21 and aging out of the program, that they don't feel completely alone. You know, that's their child's voice. That's how their child communicates, and it's so important. So Laura did a fantastic job helping me getting set up and, you know, having that conversation very early on so that there was plenty of time and the parents and student could get used to the new device. We could, you know, get the device set up at school before they did graduate. And luckily,
it's a good thing you were so early on that. He graduated during COVID, so he had it before the emergency closure. Yes. So we set him up early on, and it worked out. Thank God.
I know, right? I think about that all the time. Like, thank goodness. So props to Laura.
Yeah, well, you know, it doesn't, in the world of funding and insurance, it does not pay to procrastinate, you know. No. So we try to get that going early. But it also brings up a good point. You know, you guys mentioned earlier, you're really involved with your families and you communicate. You have really good communication. You know, you don't always necessarily with family dynamics, they're all different, and you may not necessarily receive back the same level of communication, but you guys always reach out the same amount to your families to try to build in some capacity to learn at home and carry over those skills at home. And I'm specifically thinking of some of these students that have devices, because like you said, Claire, it gets to the point where they aren't going to have us fixing everything, and they're going to have to take ownership of the operational components of the device. And when the device breaks, what happens? You know, you can't just call up Laura and say, our device is broken, I need a new one. You know, which again, Stephanie, working in St. Louis public schools, it works very differently. We don't have those same resources of, I just call someone up and then the new one appears. We were joking in the office the other day about how, you know, like, why does it take so long? And then someone who just came into our office who had worked somewhere previously was like, oh yeah, I see now why it takes more than a day to get a new device. Like there's a big long process of checklists we go through. So, but even then, it's still way faster to get a replacement or a new device here than it would be if we were going through insurance. So, you know, setting those families up for success upon graduation. And right now we do have the TILIS grant through the Special Ed Foundation, which is providing adaptable equipment. And then there are some state funded Missouri Tech at MOAT is what we call it. They have some grant and payback programs for funding, but mostly families should know that SSD is a Medicaid approved evaluation site, and we do support families that have private insurance as well to support them to get a device, you know, upon a student graduating or leaving the district. We just had a student too that we that we had here, who we found out very quickly had a system for us for a long time. And then she was moving out of the district. And so we found that out with very little notice. So we worked really hard to create at least a low tech support, dynamic support, so that she could take that with her to her new school, so she had something to show them so that they could get her started there.
Yeah. Thanks for your help with that.
No problem. No problem. I had some laminating to do very quickly, but she was worth it. All of our kids are worth it, making sure that they have a voice, because when they, nothing's scarier, right? Like, even thinking about, like, Stephanie, you said you went from here to St. Louis Public briefly, thinking about, you had all this stuff. And so your assumption would be, I would have that at my new school. Well, nothing's scarier than not having the supports you need, being thrown into the fire, if you will. As far as setup. So speaking of setup though, so we're thinking, you guys have such a great setup, and your pairs, and like you've mentioned, collaboration. You guys have all had some training with me, but the pairs especially have had some side-by-side coaching. And just how would you describe, how would you guys say you've used the training, either in AAC or otherwise? How would you say you guys have used that in practice? What have you put in place that you guys feel like has been successful?
I think through some of the trainings that, like, you've been able to assist with, and then gaining, I don't know if I want to say that we've gained like the para buy-in, or if they've really just gained their confidence and the ability to use it. Our paras have gotten almost natural in being able to see what's working with a device, what's not working with a device. A funny story would be a student who actually graduated last year. We ended up having to put like a feature on it so he wouldn't be able to hit the same button every 2 seconds, because in math class, his favorite joke, if you were identifying coins, he loved Sheldon from Big Bang Theory, and he would do the penny, 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 like when Sheldon like knocks on the door. And it became a disruption. So I know you shouldn't really hit mute on a student, right? Like you do on the TV remote, but we had to put a time limit on how quickly he could hit some of these buttons, because it just got a little overboard. We love humor, but then we had to draw a line somewhere.
I never had heard that story. Knowing that student, that is fantastic, because that
totally fits him.
And thinking about too, like when you really presume that kids mean what they mean, and thinking about how they use things in context, right? Like if you didn't know that he loved Big Bang Theory, you might just be like, why does he keep perseverating on the word penny? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But no, like being involved, having the rapport, knowing him, knowing that he's a jokester, you guys knew that he was making the correlation. Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so great. That's so great. I love it.
But yeah, and then I think like in the classroom, the teachers, like we are modeling how to use the device, and our paras have really picked up on it. And this year we do have a new staff member who's working with our students. We have a new para this year. And I feel like, I mean, it's been hard. It's a hard transition. It's a weird year, but it's already starting to feel comfortable in making sure that that device is going with us when we move from one location to the next. So the fact that that's that baseline, that's that very simple standard of they need to go with us everywhere that we go. And the fact that she's picked up on that is already a success in our eyes. And as we continue to model and show, eventually she'll be proficient at using the device as well. So that's all I can really say.
That's what I was going to say. I think the training has helped with that kind of that buy-in, and that just that little confidence piece of not only should this device go anywhere, which is a struggle I know a lot of people sometimes have, is you just see devices laying around everywhere. So having that buy-in of that, I know when I leave the room, it will still go with the students, which is great. And then also of them knowing how to take maybe what the whole class is doing and being able to model that communication so that it fits our AAC user. So that doesn't mean changing it completely, but how can I word this question so that what they're focusing on their AAC and their vocabulary, that they can still participate and set them up for success. Where I think it used to be, we have them thinking, oh, we need a program for every single lesson, all new vocabulary. We need every specific character in the book. Now they feel a lot more comfortable with knowing, here's our vocabulary that we're targeting for this specific AAC user, and how can we use the lesson to also target that vocabulary, or how can we word it to set them up to be able to successfully participate.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. It's so nice to hear that feedback too, because we've worked really hard on, we talk about it in the AAC world, it's called descriptive teaching, right? So we don't necessarily have to program all of those fringe words like molecule and atom, but we can talk about science in the form of describing a molecule or atom. Like, is it big? Is it little? Is it many? Is it few? Is it all of those things, like when we talk about science, hot or cold, and knowing that they've carried that over. And I would say too, if you're listening out there and you feel like your team is struggling, just consider building that capacity, like investing that time into the staff, because, it's well worth it when you can finally get to a point where they're able to teach others, and not just, like you mentioned, Claire, not just the technical side of things, but the true philosophy and the buy-in of like, oh yeah, this is their voice, this has to go with them, and treat it like any other part of a medical piece of equipment that we know they need. Oh, that makes me so happy. You should give them extra candy from me. Just right. Throw that out there. I'll send you a $5 and you just buy an extra bag. Any other AAC supports that you guys have in place? You mentioned visuals. The device comes everywhere with them. Any other AAC supports that you have in place as far as resources, or just curricular supports that you have in place that you feel like really work well for your team?
We're really big components on like the typical like news to you. I'm sure a lot of people are out there using like unique learning systems or anything like that. And just how it's kind of built in already into their curriculum. I
was going to say with the virtual learning, one new resource that we've been using, which was helpful for a variety of users, not only our AAC, but for all of our students, was the Boom cards, the Boom learning. And we were able to go in and find ones that maybe had words and visuals, and has the options there where they can choose. So giving them the kind of independence of these activities while we were virtual was great. So that's definitely something we use. We also have a low-tech communication device, which is always, I feel like, coming in handy when we've had new students arrive, or when students' devices are dead or anything. Sometimes even I just pull it out when anyone's struggling with the words that they want to find, right? For description words.
Now, earlier when Stephanie was having word finding issues, did you pull it out and say,
right? I should have said, here you go. Yeah.
Here you go.
I joke about that in our office. I'm like, oh, I can't find the words today. I'm just going to grab a board.
Yeah. Today's been a hard day for us. We've needed that.
That and sugar.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and then the other thing too is just thinking about, we mentioned it earlier, but thinking about how your students move to more independent settings. So knowing that we want them to go to VSP and eventually job sites, anything you can think of that a team that was be listening, you really feel like there's a great resource out there that we really kind of gravitate towards that would be helpful in supporting the students? I
can't think of any like online per se, like resources that we've been using. So I teach our in-house, which is our on-campus, like CBBI sites. And I teach 3 different classes, and each class is meant to be like a different level of prompting, a different level of support. I collaborate very closely with our other teachers who teach the off-campus sites. And with that, we use the same rubric, the same grading scale, the same soft skills and hard skills checklist, and having that unity and understanding and seeing that in my setting, what types of supports can I create to put into place in order to have them to continue to build on that scaffold that our school has set up naturally. And I know that this sounds silly, but like Teachers Pay Teachers has become a huge resource. Claire and I both started following the same person. Yes, we both started following like
Facebook pages and Facebook blogs that are like, one is Sped Adulting, I believe it's called. And, you know, they're always coming up with great ideas or free resources. We're always tagging each other, being like, we want this, we need this. So sometimes the curriculums are a lot of work, or maybe we don't need. I think we found the most success by, you know, online, finding other people just like us who are facing the same thing or trying to target those same skills. And those have been best resources, I think.
Now you said that you follow the same people on Teachers Pay Teachers. Is there anybody that you can think of that?
So I know, like, this is an Instagram and Facebook account. Is it called Sped Adulting? Sped
Adulting.
Okay. I'm going to have to check that one out too, because it sounds like a really great resource.
Yeah, we'll have to send it to you. So she's actually based out of California, and she works with transition students, so the 18 to 21-year-olds. And some of the things that she's posting are task cards, and she does flash sales. So you can get some of them, like before school started, I bought them all for $1 a piece. And that's amazing because they're great. They're scaffolds within them. She has maybe up to 3 different levels, depending on what it is. Some of them are super functional, like expiration dates. For our math class, we're working on dollar up, or how much change do I get back? And she has those task cards. So some of them even come in a digital format. So it kind of depends on what your setup is and how you want it. I've recently just printed a couple that are printed in color, that we're going to have available in the classroom for students to actually use as independent. And then other times we're projecting it up on our screen. We do not have a smart board, so we are old school, going up and with a dry erase marker and having to circle it. But for those of you out there that actually have a smart board, you can actually touch the real answer and it will ding and move on. And so her digital activities are set up amazing as well. A freebie that was just out there recently was next dollar up, but color by number. So you have to figure out the next dollar up, and then you get to color it, and it's all Thanksgiving coloring sheet. So it was just a good little time filler to have for our kiddos.
This isn't a resource, but it just made me think of it. Another setup for success I think that I am lucky to have is that I'm working with the students in the center-based program and maybe with our in-house CBVI or job skills, but I also get to usually go off campus. So I also see students for speech and language therapy at their off-campus sites. And so I'm getting both aspects where I can see, you know, what are some students struggling with in these job sites? What are some of the demands, communication demands that are being asked of them? So then I can pre-teach, right? I can kind of use my knowledge of what I know that they're working up towards in their junior or senior year. So when I'm working with them as freshmen and sophomores, I can kind of have all those pre-teaching lessons and knowing what to focus on in therapy ahead of time. So I think that's helpful too, is that I'm seeing what job sites they're going out to. I'm seeing what their job coaches or employers are wanting from them and what are maybe common problems they're seeing, so that we can start those right away freshman year so that they have those skills.
I think that brings up a good point, and just a question other people might have as far as, you know, challenges go. Like, one of the challenges that we think of could be the fact that how do we carry something over from during those transitions? So is there any other challenges that you guys either see at the high school level, like currently, minus the whole COVID thing, but is there any other high school challenges that you're seeing, AAC or not? Or if there's nothing you can think of, I'm also wondering, is there anything you wish some of the middle school programs had? You know, you talked about pre-teaching. Is there anything you wish that they would start on a little bit earlier, or set you guys up so that the students coming into the program would already have a grasp on, so that they had an edge up on some of these really great job skills that you're doing?
Can you think of some, Claire?
You guys have such a great program that it's really hard to think of some challenges, and really, you guys are very positive. So any challenge you would probably shift to, this is more of an attack of how we work on it.
I feel like the biggest thing that we've always discussed is like the school to home divide. So, and I know like we've had students come up where it's been known that they're, you know, proficient at using their device at school, but then when we go home, it gets locked in a locker or in a closet. You know, it's stuck in the backpack or whatever it is, or it goes home and you can tell it doesn't get used, it doesn't get charged, and then it comes to school and it's not charged. And now we're spending half the day having it charged and plugged in. So then therefore the student doesn't have a voice, and you just get stuck in that like endless battle, that endless cycle. But I think that's where we have started to kind of like repair some of that at the high school level, just due to our relationships that we build with our parents and our families. And I feel like
I think that's a good one to say, just because, you know, everyone's a creature of habit too. So, and I know that, you know, sometimes getting that is so difficult to have that buy-in from at home, but you know, it's hard to sometimes break that routine of, you know, we leave it at school, we don't use, they can use it at school. It's hard to kind of break that routine with families and say, well, no, we can use it at home. And, you know, this is what they can do with it. And so, you know, trying to start that, and I'm sure everyone does, it's not always an easy thing to do, but starting that habit right away and trying to get those parents involved.
Yeah. And it's twofold, right? It's parent involvement, because there's that whole deflection of like, well, it's not really us, it's school, and we know what they mean at home. But, you know, talking to them about the importance and how much more they can do, and showing them that, like the power of videos and discussions of like, oh yeah, he told me a joke about Big Bang Theory. Like, you know what I mean? That is important. But then also the component of student ownership. And definitely, if they really have ownership of their device and they see the importance because it's being used everywhere, you know, the parents are taking it, the expectation is they take it everywhere at school. Definitely. That expectation is so important, because then they are going to be using it at home too. They're going to pull it out.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah. Okay. That's a really good one, I think. So as far as the last question is just my favorite question. And it can be about a student, or it can be about something that you've had related to AAC, but we ask every interviewee, what is your favorite AAC moment to date? Again, student related, or something that you've just found inspirational to yourself throughout your journey.
The one I think of, which is just one of my favorite moments, to be honest, overall, is we had an amazing SLP come back, Monica Kleekamp, and we were working with her on a literacy program. And through that, we got to have all of our students in our English class write their own story, completely on their own. They could be, with them being a character in it, they could do whatever they wanted. And then they drew pictures and they got to present it. And so we had parents invited, some other classes came to watch, other teachers, and they got to go up in the front. We got to rent out the drama room for the day, and they got to present their story in front of everyone. So every student did that on their own. So our students with AAC devices, that was a great opportunity where we could pre-program their stories. We practiced with them, and we used those AAC devices to read those stories, and seeing their faces as their story was, as they were telling their story to everyone, was, you know, they were so proud. Their personalities just came out so much. Everyone's story fit them so perfectly, I think, which made it even better. But seeing how proud they were was amazing. And I think just showing that, you know, they all deserve that opportunity to have that moment where they felt so proud, and that something that they created was out there for everyone to listen to. I thought that was one of my favorite moments.
I love that. I might need to see some videos if you have any, because I didn't get to see this live.
I have them all saved. We made them into PowerPoints because they were projected. So the text would be down there with their pictures that they drew. And for some of our students who dexterity couldn't draw some pictures, they would do cutouts of magazines, or we would Google pictures and they could pick on the computer what Google image they wanted, which made for some very funny pictures, I will say.
I'm sure.
Oh my gosh, it was so great.
But I think part of that too, that Monica was really working towards, and why she came back, was just that representation in the literacy field, and how individuals with disabilities aren't as widely represented in that area. And so just being able to a couple things that I think of when I hear that story is that they are represented. They were able to create their own representation of who they are in the story, or someone like them. So there's power in that. But then Gail Van Tatenhoff, who's a really great researcher and SLP in the field who's been around a long time. She works with adults with developmental disabilities, young adults and older adults now as they've aged up. But she talks about the power in social constructs and being able to tell a story, just a social story, like a conversation or something about a remote event, because there's so much social reciprocity and there's so much energy that you're getting both ways, and how that's so powerful. And so that story just reminds me of that, and how even though you had to take time and build those stories with the students, how worth it was so that they could share that with other people, and then how those people then perceived them. Because my guess is that the entire audience that got to hear them had a higher perception of every single student, because again, they're at different abilities, had a higher perception of each student after that than they did before.
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. So at the end of that, to add to that, our librarians around that same time realized that they did not have books that were age appropriate or reading level appropriate for our students in the library here at our high school. And they actually asked us for a list of books that our students would enjoy to have. And we took a lot of the books that Monica had brought and used during her time with us. And the school actually purchased them for us. Because of COVID, they're being housed in my classroom right now. But once some of the restrictions start getting lifted, we will put them back in the library, and we will have our own very private little section all for our students. But other students in the building will be more than welcome to check them out as well. And it's just great that people with disabilities are just going to be highlighted more and more throughout our building.
Yeah, I love the librarians, when they asked for that, they just worded it so perfectly, where they kind of realized that gap that they had, and they said, we want your student, we want any student in the building to come down to our library and to be able to check out a book, and that they can enjoy and that they can read. We want them to have that experience too, and as they should. And so, I just thought that was a great moment, from something that we were doing just from our class, just by inviting the rest of the school to come see. They had that aha moment right there, and they made a change right away, and it was something that they felt passionate about. And I know our students will really be able to enjoy going down to that library during a break and checking out a book and having the responsibility of, you have to turn that book in. And so I think that was phenomenal.
It's just so powerful, right? Like, in that, out of the words of them, like, you know what I mean? You didn't have to advocate. They were able to self-advocate and show someone else, like, this is important.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That story makes me happy. We have to end there, because there's nothing that's going to get better than that. And I know you guys got to get going, but thank you so much. There's so many gems in here that I know that a lot of staff will be able to kind of take and just apply to what they're doing and enhance what they're doing. If someone has a specific question, what is the best way to reach out to you guys?
I'd say through email. So my email will be mccarthyc@msdr9.org.
And can you spell out McCarthy?
Yes. McCarthy.
And then I am Ochoa, SOCHOAS @msdr9.org.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for asking us.
Yes, this was great.
It was fun.
Awesome. All right. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Hi, guys. I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about planning ahead, because we're talking about high school students, and we know they're going to be leaving us one day, and they're going out into the big world and community, and we want them to be successful. We want them to be able to communicate with anybody about anything at any time, anywhere, functional communication. So my question is, are we planning ahead? Are we looking to skills that we should be teaching them in order to allow them to have that communication skill? So I'm going to talk about charting a life course, and this is something that SSD has been using. I went to a training a couple of years ago for a parent group that someone from this organization, this is a nationwide organization, and she came and spoke, and it had some great resources and great ways to kind of help us plan. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I am going to go to SSD's new website. And I'm just going to show you where you can find this right away, without having to do major searching. If you go to Find It Fast, a bar comes up. I've already got mine ready to go, Charting a Life Course. I say search, and it's going to take me to different results. I'm going to go to the second one, Leadership and Superintendent Updates, which is just came up this spring. And they been strategic planning process, but I'm just going to go down to the next item, which is transition. And this was put on the website by Dr. Keenan, and they just talk about what is transition and why is it important. But they ask here what teachers in schools can do. So there's two different things that they've highlighted: parent-centered planning. I'm sorry, person-centered planning. This is the parent brief. I'm getting my words all confused, but that's a site you can go to. But then they also have Charting the Life Course. And what I really liked about this presentation that I went to was ideally you would have the student involved, but even for our younger kids, I don't think we should wait. I think the quicker we start thinking about it, the better. The more we're making our goals appropriate for their future plans, the better, because it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. We can't wait till they're already about ready to leave the high school setting and go out, and all of a sudden we're going to make things happen. It's going to take some time, and it takes practice, and it takes opportunity. So I want us to think ahead. And the other thing too is just to realize and appreciate that, school is its own special environment. We have routines that are wonderful, but that doesn't mean that we're setting the student up to be more independent, more autonomous, more spontaneous and unique with their communication. I keep saying the big world. The big wide world has all kinds of things that they need to be able to do. And the more independent they are, the better. So this is Charting the Life Course. And what I'm going to show you is they have forms, planning. Let me go back to share my screen here. They have we should sit down and discuss, what are the personal strengths and assets? What are relationships that are important to the student? Their eligibility specific, what are they able to do? What is out in the community that they could do? And what are some technology supports that they need? And then the other side here, let me move myself over. It just asks questions again: what people like and admire about me, what's important to me, how to best support me. And this is, in my thinking, a wonderful thing, a tool that we should be filling out early on, just to the next team that's going to be supporting the student. We don't have to wait till they're leaving us. And then again, it's, forms about trajectory, where are we at now versus, what vision, what do I want? What would I love to see happen as far as for myself as a student, but even as for a team, what do we hope and want to, think that the student might be wanting to do if they're not able to tell us themselves, and what don't they want to do? We need to be cautious and think about that too. And then the other forms, this one talks about what's some past life experiences and events that have supported your vision for a good life. What are life experiences that pushed your trajectory toward things? So it's just what kinds of things have gone on? What are things that they've been involved in? And then we were talking about moving forward. So this is definitely something that we could use over and over and over and over again. And I love the fact that these forms are ready. There's videos when we go to their site. They have videos that you can watch and all kinds of information that you could tap into. So it's a wonderful resource. The other thing I wanted to show you is as far as my hope to kind of help spur some ideas is, let me stop sharing for a second and go back and share this form. And this is something that I put together just to kind of get at a glance, 50 ways to become more independent with communication at school. So again, I'm writing it to a student, but the staff is definitely my first line of support to make sure, we give them the opportunities. So again, big picture, I want my students out and about, even within their building, to interact with more people, to have more of those unique communication opportunities, and to draw in unfamiliar listeners. It's not uncommon for somebody to tell me, oh yeah, we understand everything he says. And that's wonderful. But you're a familiar listener who's gotten kind of used to the speech pattern or what they might be saying. Some of our kids have a more limited repertoire of things they say. So you kind of know what to expect. But somebody who's new, somebody who's unfamiliar, that's my question. Do they understand? If they don't, then we need to work on this, because that doesn't mean, to me, that's an indication that this student is as independent as I want them to be. So go, use the office staff, another staff member there in the building. And again, it's just that idea that they learn those skills of interacting, greeting, but then, passing along something, being more independent with navigating the building would be wonderful. So all kinds of different things we could do. So then I get down into, interviewing and doing surveys and things like that. So they have a chance to interact with a lot of people, and whether this is verbally, with the communication system, with their voice output device, all kinds of different ways, give them chances to do that. And then give directions to a classmate. So maybe we could team up with somebody else, and my student tells the other student how to get to the office, how to draw a picture, how to make a recipe. It's stuff that you maybe have done with them yourself, but I want you to branch out. So this form we will post on our resources, and just again, and this one, describe feelings in various situations. They're not showing them so much anymore, but there for a while, there was Allstate had the mayhem, and the guy who was always getting in trouble and stuff. There were some good ones there that you could just kind of, if you could, and I'm assuming they're on YouTube, grab them and just say, well, how was that person feeling? What could they have done? So you're setting up, and it's a negative situation usually. Mayhem doesn't come around in positive situations, but it's okay because it's capturing just a couple minutes, but it gives you a chance to talk it through. So describing things, writing a story, reading a story, writing a poem, all kinds of fun things. So I want you to kind of have this maybe posted on your bulletin board, and then you can just be looking at things that you guys can do in therapy. And hopefully at home for homework would be good too. All right, talk to you later.
Hi guys, it's Laura Hayes, and I am so excited to talk to you today about our innovative activity. Today, the innovative activity is actually called the Dynamo Lab, and I just thought this was such a cool find when I discovered it, especially for our older students. We're talking about these students that really want to be engaged and want to have them motivated and using communication, but they're older, and so it's harder to find motivators for them. So this is called Dynamo Lab, and it actually has 20 different experiments that you can do with your students or with your kids, and they organize it, and then it comes with all the materials. But what I love is that a majority of these experiments are things that you can do in your home or materials that you have in your home. So like the very first one is oil and water, and you literally just need your cup, your little beaker, and a test tube or a different cup, and just a little filter for it to go through. And so they have included your little filter, you've got beakers, you've got test tubes, and you can do all of that with the materials they provide, or you can provide your own. So again, that's just a very, very simple one. But then if you have your kiddos that are motivated by things like colors or reactions, explosive reactions, you can do other experiments, like one of my favorites, creating your own lava lamp. So when you're doing these activities, you can target words like get, put, in help, need. What are the things we need for this experiment? Well, here's your supply list. We need a coloring agent. So just, again, food coloring. We would need a foaming agent, and they've included that one. Again, for my creative people, you probably could find a foaming agent. Glow in the dark powder. I mean, come on, that's a given. Again, they included that, but you can find that on your own. And then a yellow measuring spoon. The generic teaspoon will work just fine too. And then what do we need from home? Need water, oil, and an empty water bottle. So then it gives you the directions, and you can either use these directions as is, or if you're like me, I would probably simplify them and use some visual supports using the student's communication system to help kind of walk them through what that pathway would look like. So what do we need to do? We need to put color in. We need to put water in, put oil in, or yellow liquid in, put that in if you want to be very generic about it. Put glow powder in, put the green color in, then put 5 foaming agents in, shake it up, or you could do mix or stir or go up and down. Those would all be things that you could target using core vocabulary or having your students direct the activity, taking turns. And then you have this cool, very, very motivating activity and product that comes out of it, right? You've got your own little lava lamp that glows in the dark. So there's all different kinds of activities with color agents and crystals and things like that. And then they've got a third section, which is all about eruptions and and things, reactions. So they do have a little volcano that you can use for these reactions, and agents and citric acid and little petri dishes that you can explore. Again, they've got the test tubes. They've got holders for the test tubes, but you can make your own. That's the beauty of this, is a lot of these are household items like baking soda and things that you can find yourself. You can read up about it. There's background pages, but again, you can adapt these experiments so that there's core vocabulary and the ability to direct, ask questions. What happened? What did it do? Where did it go? Did it go up, down? There's some about sinking and floating and how we can make that happen with the same object, like an egg. And you can talk about it went down, it goes up. It's high, it's low. All of those really, really cool things. You can comment about it, like that's awesome or that's boring. These are all things that you can do with your students, especially some of your older students who are hard to motivate. So it's called Dynamo Lab. I love it. I'm going to be definitely doing some of these with Wesley and, recommending them to more of my students, because I just think these are so fun. They're materials and things you can have on hand. They come in the kit if you want to buy the kit. I'll put the notes for the link for the kit is in the episode notes, and we'll have a handout as well to go alongside it, so you can share that resource to target vocabulary and different pragmatic functions with your teams and with your families. And we hope you get as much enjoyment out of it as I know I will. Thanks.
Well, that was great, Laura. Those ladies had so much information to share. That was wonderful.
Oh, they're just the best. I love getting a chance to work with them, and we hope that you guys had at least a few strategies and thoughts to take away. They're also really great as far as if you reach out and you want to share some ideas or some questions with them. I know that they would be happy to get back to you too. They're just the best. So yeah, when you're thinking about these students, like Cheryl mentioned at the beginning, just make sure that we're thinking big picture and we're giving them the supports and the tools that they need. And remembering too that it's not always just one system. We know that our users, that we're all multiple modality communicators, right? Mm-hmm. We use pens, we use paper, we use gestures, we use facial expressions.
Yeah.
We use it all. So all of it is important. All of it is our skills that are going to help our kiddos as they transition past SSD. And that's so, so, so important, that families feel that the students themselves feel that. They want them to feel confident.
Well, and that's what I also appreciate about, I want everybody's input. We spend a lot of time with our kids, but I want the students' input. I want their families' input. I want input from people who they consider part of their, like you said, support system, that may be just a really good friend or a cousin, or, you know, I wish we did a better job of pulling all that information together. So that, you know, piece that we also included in this episode about charting the life course, it talks about that as well. It's like, you know, think about the student, and then you branch out from there. And these are the people, family, friends, that will be with them, you know, when they leave school, that's their forever support team. We're temporary when you think about it. We feel like we're here forever, but we are temporary in that student's life. So I want it to be big term.
100%. And I think I have a unique perspective on this, just with the fact that I have a sister with a disability who is an adult, and knowing how the supports do kind of drop off when you become an adult, and they're just not as abundant and forward thinking. And, you know, you have supports there. I don't want to knock any of the adult supports, especially the community supports in our area, but I can tell you from experience that it's not the same. And the level of structure and support for
funding
individuals
is another issue.
100%. Yeah. Like with these individuals with disabilities and communication needs, it's an uphill battle. So anything that you can do before we hit that point is going to be a wonderful, beautiful thing.
And like you were just saying, because you do have that personal experience, you know that you've had to step into that role several times. Your parents are there and they're taking care of things, but they need extra help from even siblings. So yeah, we need to do a better job of preparing, I think.
Yeah, and just simple things like that you don't necessarily think about. You know, my sister, she has independent service living support, but with that, she has a high staff turnover. And so she's constantly being introduced to new communication partners. And so thinking about, like you said, charting the life course, like what does that look like? Like how many new communication partners are going to be there? Or maybe mom and dad are here now, but what's the plan for them if mom and dad are no longer around? You know, what does that look like? And do they have the supports that they need for communication? Because we know that our individuals with disabilities are at risk for abuse and neglect, and communication and advocacy is so, so important for them. So making sure that above all else that we really try to instill that in them and give them the supports they need. Yep.
Right.
I don't mean to leave us on such a heavy note, but we just know how important it is.
It's reality, but it's not something we could say is light. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but hopefully, again, between all the resources and the interview, hopefully you got a few strategies, a few tidbits that you can start tomorrow. If not, we would love to hear from you. This is Laura Hayes.
And I'm Cheryl Livingston.
And thanks for listening again. We love having you as a part of AAC Innovations. Have a great week.
See ya.